He forgot to mute his mic. That's how my Monday started, listening to the VP of Product whisper to HR, just wait till the new guy gets in. We'll clean house. I was on the same Zoom call, 3 tiles down. Camera off, mic muted, smile plastered. Typical. 8 years in that office, and I'm still the ghost in the walls. The one who updates the compliance binders no one reads, fixes board minutes no one notices are broken, and sweet talks our lender's legal counsel over holiday weekends to keep us out of technical default. But sure, clean house. Just don't forget who signs off on the house's insurance policy. At Redmont Systems, I was what you might call the quiet hinge. Not the door, not the lock, just the thing that keeps the whole mess from falling off when people slam it too hard. Every quarter, someone higher up would break something, forget to notify the bank about a major change, violate a debt covenant with some flashy hire, or fudge a timeline to look better on a slide deck. And I'd be the one up till midnight, reformatting language, booking last-minute notaries, or smoothing it over with our account manager at State Mid-Bank. Nobody ever said thank you, but they didn't fire me either, which, in corporate America, is pretty much affection. Anyway, before we go further, I've got to ask a little favor. I know 90% of folks listen to these stories like I'm a voice inside their fridge or something, but if you like hearing about corporate chaos, backdoor contracts, and petty revenge dressed in HR lingo, go ahead and hit that like button and maybe even subscribe. It motivates the team, keeps the lights on, and lets me keep telling you exactly how the sausage is made. All right, back to it. The truth is, I didn't mind being overlooked. It gave me room to maneuver. While the execs chased their tailwinds and synergistic partnerships, I built relationships that actually mattered. Take Jan from State Mid, Senior Loan Oversight Officer. She liked me because I remembered her birthday, and because I didn't treat her like a vending machine for cash. She's the one who flagged a language discrepancy in our debt agreement 4 years ago, before it triggered a compliance review. I fixed it quietly. I always fixed it quietly. I wasn't flashy, never climbed the ladder, never tried. My desk was 3 rows back from the window. I brought in donuts on Fridays. I recycled the K-cups. I remembered when the founder's wife had hip surgery and sent flowers, signed from the whole company even though nobody else knew. I knew where the real power lived in the fine print, and I lived in it. Every clause, every rider, every acronym tucked into a footnote that could derail a deal. I slept better knowing I was the only one who actually read the damn documents. The founder, Richard Green, knew that. He didn't say it often, but he'd nod at me sometimes, just once like, you see it too. He was the kind of man who understood stability wasn't sexy, but it kept the lights on. He built Redmont with a calculator and a moral compass. When we landed the $120 million operational loan from State Mid, it was me in the room with him and the bank's attorneys. I reviewed the draft. I requested one small amendment, continuity clause. It required a specific individual me to approve any material policy shift or funding disbursement above a set threshold. Not for vanity, for consistency. Nobody noticed. It was page 43, clause 12C, Roman 2. They signed it, and then Richard retired. No grand farewell. Just a company-wide email, one last bagel breakfast, and out he went, gray suit and all. His son, Carter, took over the next week. Now, I'd met Carter exactly 3 times before that. Once at the holiday party where he showed up 2 hours late, bragged about his startups, and spilled a martini on my flats. Once during a pitch rehearsal where he said my slide deck had grandma energy. And once when he cornered me in the break room to ask why his corporate card kept getting declined in Chalum. Answer: you didn't submit a travel authorization form. Shocker. So when Carter walked into the Monday leadership meeting in his shiny new CEO nameplate and said, "We're going to modernize this place," I knew what was coming. New brooms sweep clean, especially when they've never had to scrub a floor. He brought in a consultant from LA, started talking about lean orgs and cost center eliminations. Someone asked him about compliance continuity. He waved it off. "We've got docs, right? We'll find someone." I almost laughed, but I just nodded and took notes. 2 days later, he cut the budget for my department by 40%. 3 days later, he removed me from the exec thread. By Friday, I was called into HR. New VP of Ops looked like she was reading a grocery list. Effective today, your position is being dissolved as part of the organizational restructure. Please return all company property, and your severance package will be reviewed pending internal approval. Carter stood behind her, arms crossed, with that smug little grin he inherited from whatever prep school bred him. As I gathered my things, he leaned in and said, "Prove your value to my father." I didn't say a word, just walked out, box in hand, badge clipped to the top. Nobody said goodbye, but they'd remember me soon enough, because Carter didn't know what his father had signed, or what I'd fixed, or just how many things had my name, not figuratively but literally, etched in ink. He thought I was the past. Turns out I was the trigger. The week after Richard Green retired felt like watching a church convert into a nightclub. Gone were the muted grays, the calm emails, the shared understanding that silence in meetings meant thought, not disengagement. Carter strutted in Monday morning like he'd just closed $1 billion SPAC and was here to disrupt legacy mindsets. Never mind that his last startup pivoted from vegan dog food to NFT lawn care before vanishing in a cloud of investor apologies. Now he was our CEO. They gave him Richard's corner office. Didn't even change the nameplate until Thursday. Brought his own standing desk, neon green ergonomic chair, and a ring light that made every Zoom look like a hostage video. His first official act, replacing the company's mission statement with a slide that just said speed, simplicity, savage execution, in bold with fire emojis. At the first leadership sync, Carter opened with a PowerPoint titled version 2.0, Building Redmont for the Next Billion. Slide 1 was a stock image of a chessboard. Slide 2 said, Legacy is the enemy of agility. Slide 3 was a bullet list. Eliminate redundancy, collapse vertical silos, modernize backend compliance ops, increase output per FTE by 200%. I was FTE #006. Been there since we were 10 people in a co-working space with leaky HVAC and a microwave that sparked when you made oatmeal. And now I was redundancy. He never mentioned my name, but every time he said outdated processes, or boomer bottlenecks, or compliance overkill, his eyes drifted across the table to where I sat, quiet, neutral, professionally dressed like I didn't just hear my own eulogy. The ops VP, a guy Carter poached from a cryptocurrency exchange that got fined into oblivion, started talking about flattening the org chart and removing friction. I asked what the new plan was for risk disclosure under the loan. He blinked, we'll automate that. Automate what exactly? A legal certification? A clause with human signatory requirements? He didn't answer, just wrote something in his phone. That Friday, Carter hosted an Ask Me Anything town hall. Someone, I still don't know who, had the audacity to ask what he was most excited about. His response, trimming the fat. Honestly, we've got too many people doing jobs we don't need anymore. It's 2025. We've got AI. No offense to legacy folks, but if your value isn't obvious, I don't have time to excavate it. The room was silent. Don't worry, he added, we'll be fair. Everyone gets a chance to prove they belong in Redmont 2.0. The founder's old chief counsel was already gone by then, amicable separation, the email said. The finance director retired early. Our facilities manager transitioned out. That was 3 people in 5 days. And every empty desk felt like a funeral without flowers. Carter started walking around with a Bluetooth headset, a protein shake, and a permanent smirk like he knew something we didn't. I heard he told the intern he wanted hungry sharks, not sleepy dolphins on his team. I wasn't even mad, just tired. You can only be the calm in the storm so long before you realize the storm's got a flamethrower and a podcast. The worst part, people started listening to him. You could see the fear crawl in behind their eyes. Directors who used to stand tall now nodded through nonsense. Junior staff started repeating Carter's phrases in Slack like incantations, velocity mindset, brand perimeter integrity, compliance elasticity. Someone actually printed his savage execution slide and pinned it above the printer. And yet, nobody asked the real questions. What happens to our debt agreements? What happens when the bank checks for continuity and the continuity is gone? What happens when the person who actually knows what keeps this company solvent is cut out? The thing about people like Carter is they mistake silence for submission. They think if no one pushes back, it means they're winning. But me, I was just watching, listening, gathering. He was so busy performing dominance that he never once thought to read what he was sitting on. The founder had trusted him with the controls to a plane built by grown-ups. But Carter didn't know how to read the gauges. He just liked pushing buttons, and somewhere in his flurry of LinkedIn posts and motivational Slack messages, he forgot something very simple. This company was built on trust, and trust, unlike NFTs or vision decks, doesn't pivot. It expires. Friday morning hit different. Not because the coffee tasted worse or the printer jammed again. Those were constants, but because the entire office felt off, like someone had turned the volume down on the world and was waiting to press play on a funeral playlist. I logged in at 8:57 a.m. sharp. By 9:02, my calendar dinged with a new invite, HR, role transition conversation, no host, no agenda, just a 9:30 slot in conference room B. My stomach didn't sink. It folded calmly, like a suit being packed for a trip you didn't book. I walked in at 9:28, never give them the satisfaction of lateness. Carter was already there, leaning against the wall like he was about to pitch me a startup that sold smart yoga mats. Across from him sat the new VP of Ops, a woman named Darcy who I'd met twice and neither time sober. On the table, a cardboard box with my name written in Sharpie. Misspelled. Carter didn't sit. Virginia. He said with that infomercial smile, we're streamlining. He gestured like a magician pulling a scarf from his sleeve. Legacy roles, high friction. It's all in the memo you'll be getting. Darcy pushed a manila folder toward me. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. I opened it. 3 pages of HR-branded fluff about operational agility and role realignment. Nowhere did it say what my severance would be. Nowhere did it mention the loan. Nowhere did it acknowledge the $250,000 in compliance work I'd done solo while Carter was off surfing in Ibiza last month. Effective immediately, she said, carefully, your position is being dissolved. Your access credentials have already been removed from internal systems. We'll follow up regarding transition paperwork. I looked at Carter. He looked pleased with himself, like he'd finally figured out how to get rid of the weird, quiet lady who always corrected his calendar invites. Then he said it, prove your value to my father. No smile this time, just a challenge, like this was chess and I'd finally been checkmated. Funny thing is, I didn't flinch. I didn't scream or cry or throw a stapler. I didn't demand anything. I just reached for the box, placed the folder inside, and stood up. I paused at the door. You know, I said, glancing at the muted Redmont logo on the wall. Thing about scaffolding is, you only notice it when you rip it down too fast. He didn't get it. Of course he didn't. His brain was already back on whatever Slack channel was blowing up with reaction gifs and new brand vision slides. I was just another cost center he'd crossed off his to-do list. I walked out, down the hallway I designed the emergency protocol for, past the compliance posters I wrote, and out through the security gate that beeped red instead of green. Badge already deactivated. 2 interns were microwaving burritos in the kitchen. They looked up at me like I was a ghost. One of them offered a sad little wave. I nodded back, then I stepped outside. No parade, no goodbye card. No catered lunch like they gave Rob when he retired after 3 years of managing server rooms from his basement in Ohio. Just me, my box, and a very specific memory, page 43. Clause 12C, Roman 2. In the event of any material financial policy shift or disbursement request under the agreed facility, written authorization must be secured from the individual named in Schedule B, unless said individual is deceased or incapacitated. Schedule B, Virginia M. Holmes, not head of compliance. Not authorized signatory, named individual. I flagged it, I added it. I watched the bank's legal counsel initial it. And I watched Richard Green sign it twice, once on the master document and once on the continuity rider. They thought it was ceremonial. That clause was my insurance policy. And Carter had just lit the fuse on his father's legacy with a $3 cardboard box and a soundbite. I walked to my car, set the box in the trunk, and sat behind the wheel. Didn't start the engine, just sat there. Then slowly, I pulled my personal file binder from the back seat, the one I kept updated just in case. Contracts, side letters, scanned documents with metadata timestamps. And there it was, page 43, clause 12C, Roman 2. With my name, the rider, the signatories, intact, active, and very much enforceable. Carter didn't just fire the head of compliance. He fired the keystone of a $120 million operational loan. And tomorrow, the bank was expecting a quarterly compliance call with me. Let's see how they react when they realize their required signatory has vanished. Let's see what happens when I go silent. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. I just sat in the silence of my living room, the soft hum of the fridge cutting through the dark, and started pulling binders from my credenza like I was defusing a bomb. Because that's what Carter had just done, yanked the pin on a live grenade and tossed it into the boardroom. Too proud to notice the spoon hadn't flown off yet. The cardboard box they handed me in conference room B was still sitting on the kitchen table. My badge, a stapler, one dying succulent, and a thumb drive I kept in my desk drawer, the one with a mirror folder of every critical document I ever worked on. Not because I didn't trust Redmont, because I knew Redmont. By 2:14 a.m., I had my 2020 to 2024 loan oversight file open in 3 separate PDF viewers. Clause 12C, Roman 2 was exactly where I remembered it, third paragraph, buried between refinancing triggers and permitted payment adjustments. It was the kind of clause no one notices unless they're hunting for it. A fail-safe, a firewall, the continuation clause. It didn't just require a sign-off from a compliance officer. It specified me, my full legal name. It tied my authorization to the release of funds, to the voting rights on capital expenditures, to the covenant that required lender reapproval in the event of structural leadership changes. It was surgical, intentional. Richard had added it after a particularly brutal loan negotiation with State Mid's Risk Committee 3 years ago. He pulled me into his office afterward, handed me a paper coffee cup, and said, "You're the reason we still have leverage. I want that memorialized." I thought he was being nice. Turns out he was being strategic. Schedule B of the rider agreement was printed on company letterhead. His signature, mine, the bank's, it wasn't ceremonial, it was embedded. I stared at that clause until the words stopped looking like English and started pulsing with weight. This wasn't a gotcha. This wasn't revenge. This was leverage at 3:42 a.m. I sent a message through my personal email to Jan Tomason at State Mid. I didn't explain much, just asked if she had 50 minutes to speak in the morning. I attached the clause and labeled the subject line, Urgent Compliance Continuity Check-in Redmont Systems. I hit send, closed my laptop, then reopened it 10 seconds later and pulled up LinkedIn. Search for Redmont's company page. Carter had posted a CEO welcome video with his arms crossed, trying to look visionary in front of a blank whiteboard. The caption said, "Excited to usher Redmont into a bold new chapter. Leaner, faster, smarter. Let's scale together. #leadership #execution #Redmont 2.0." I clicked mute, took a screenshot, and saved it to a folder labeled Timeline Assets. At 8:03 a.m., Jan called. Virginia? Her voice was crisp. No small talk, just saw your email. I'm going to pretend I didn't open it until right now. You're not technically on their authorized list anymore, so this is an informal courtesy. I understand, I said. All I need is confirmation. Is the clause still valid? She didn't answer for 6 seconds. I counted them. Then, yes, clause 12C, Roman 2, is active. Your removal without notice or documentation constitutes a covenant breach. If we move forward with disbursement or expansion funding without your written sign-off, we're exposed. What does that mean for Redmont? It means we pause everything until your authorization is either reinstated or legally waived, which requires a board vote and a formal amendment. And if they already submitted a disbursement request, they have. Jan sighed. Then the clock is ticking. She didn't have to say what we both knew. Bank had 72 hours to verify compliance on pending disbursements. Otherwise, the entire pipeline would freeze. Payroll, procurement, vendor obligations, strategic initiatives, all of it. I appreciate the call, I said. One more thing, Jan added. You put that clause in, didn't you? With Richard's approval. She laughed low and sharp. Damn, you're good. I didn't respond. Just ended the call, reopened the file, and started building my timeline. Emails, approvals, version control, proof of signature, every document cross-referenced. I labeled a folder continuity packet and backed it up to 3 locations, 2 cloud, 1 hard drive. I also texted a friend in legal consulting. How quickly can I draft a scope of services for independent compliance advisory? Need it airtight, need it yesterday. By noon, I had 3 messages from unknown numbers. One was the new Ops VP, another from HR. The third, Carter. Hope you're well. Can we chat? Quick clarification about something in the loan docs. Nothing urgent, nothing urgent. He was already feeling the tremor, but he hadn't heard the crack yet. And me? I wasn't angry, I wasn't scared, I was awake. Monday morning arrived with the precision of a loaded gun clicking into place. I wasn't in the office. I wasn't on the call. I wasn't even listed on the org chart anymore. But I was very much in control, and Carter, poor idiot, had no idea the floor was about to dissolve under his brand-strategized loafers. 9 a.m. sharp. That's when the board call was scheduled. Expansion strategy review. A cool $50 million pull from the existing credit line to fund phase Roman 2 of their next-gen platform, whatever buzzword salad they cooked up to impress the new investor group. I'd read the project summary when I still had access. High cost, low clarity, zero understanding of how deeply embedded the compliance infrastructure actually was. But hey, it had a 3D logo and a pitch deck with animations, so obviously it was going to change the world. 9:04 a.m. The board is logged in. Carter's smiling in his glass office, freshly barbered, navy suit too tight in the shoulders. The VP of Ops is fiddling with his audio. One of the junior directors looks like she's reading from a script she barely skimmed. Everyone's waiting. Then the Zoom chimes. David Bernal, Senior VP, State Midbank, has joined the meeting. David's no nonsense. Been in finance for 30 years, grew up on asset-backed portfolios and bad coffee. He doesn't do small talk, doesn't do second chances. If he's on your call, it's either to sign off on something huge or to stop you from wrecking the car before it hits the wall. Carter leans in, that over-rehearsed enthusiasm dripping from every word. David, glad you could join us. We're really excited to walk through our revised scaling plan. Think you'll be pleased with how lean we've gone. David doesn't smile. He squints at his screen. I'm looking at the participant list, he says flatly. There seems to be an error. Carter blinks. An error? I don't see my required signatory for the loan on this call. The silence wasn't just awkward, it was seismic. David continued, voice calm, clipped. According to the terms of the 2020 Operational Lending Agreement, Clause 12C, Roman 2, any expansion, capital reallocation, or structural policy change requires written and / or verbal confirmation from the individual named in Schedule B. I don't see that individual present. Carter laughs. It's thin, desperate. Ah, that. Yes, well, Virginia Holmes is no longer with Redmont. We've transitioned that role internally. David's eyes didn't blink. Schedule B doesn't say role, it specifies person. As in Virginia M. Holmes, unless I missed her name on this call, the Zoom grid shifts, no one speaks. Carter clears his throat. We were under the impression that clause was more of a formality. We've consulted internally. Who at the bank approved that interpretation? David interrupts. Because no request for waiver or clause modification has crossed my desk, and I'm the primary on this account. The Ops VP suddenly leans forward like he's about to say something, then stops, probably realizing nothing good happens when the guy controlling your company's purse strings starts quoting clauses by memory. David continues. Have you submitted disbursement documents? Carter falters. Well, the forms were prepped, yes. We've got a pipeline depending on the Q4 draw, and our teams are. David's tone shifts just slightly, like he's bored, or worse, disappointed. Until Virginia Holmes confirms in writing or appears to authorize the shift, State Mid is pausing all movement on the facility. That includes the expansion capital, interest recalc adjustments, and vendor batch releases tied to your Phase Roman 2 invoice schedule. He waits. No one jumps in. If Virginia Holmes is not reachable, he adds, you'll need to schedule a formal covenant hearing. which requires 7 days' notice. Full board minutes, legal review, and updated filings. Carter opens his mouth. David cuts him off. I'll stay on the call for 10 minutes. If she joins, we proceed. If not, we pause. Thank you. The Zoom goes dead silent again. You could hear the collective blood pressure rise through the pixels. I wasn't watching, but I could imagine it. The brand new CTO swiveling in his chair, trying not to look terrified. The investor rep pretending to take notes while texting someone under the table. The board chair, jaw clenched so tight his teeth probably cracked. Carter, sweating through his custom-tailored blazer, turning to the ops VP like, why didn't anyone catch this? Meanwhile, I was sitting in my apartment, sipping chamomile, watching the light shift across my living room floor. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hi, Virginia. This is Lauren from Redmont's legal team. Quick question about some legacy agreements. Are you available to talk this afternoon? I didn't answer. Let them stew in it. They wanted lean. They just discovered what missing muscle feels like. The pipeline froze on Tuesday. No official announcement. No red banner across the company dashboard. Just a slow bleed of panic, masked with cheerful Slack messages and frantic whispers behind closed doors. The Phase Roman 2 rollout, Carter's precious crown jewel, hit a concrete wall and no one had the tools to climb it. The first sign was subtle. A procurement request flagged as pending vendor verification. Then another and another. By noon, someone in facilities posted in #ops support. Anyone else seeing halted PO approvals? Need toner and it won't go through. An intern replied with a meme. Nobody laughed. By Wednesday morning, the truth started leaking. David Bernal and the team at State Mid had officially paused all active disbursements. The $50 million expansion funds? Frozen. The quarterly bridge draw for operating cash flow? Delayed pending compliance resolution. Vendor payments that were usually clockwork now required manual override, which was legal speak for no one has the authority to touch this until the problem is fixed. But the problem was me. More specifically, the absence of me. Carter tried to downplay it at first. He told the board it was a temporary systems discrepancy, that legacy access rights were being restructured. Then he pivoted to technical misalignment, then outsourced errors, each one thinner than the last. The truth? They couldn't even open the damn portal. The bank's backend wouldn't accept signatures unless mine was on file or unless the clause was legally amended, which required a board vote, full legal documentation. Most critically, my participation and I was silent, phone off, inbox untouched, notifications muted. My LinkedIn, however, was very much alive. Virginia M. Holmes, independent compliance consultant, regulatory continuity strategist, advisor to high-stakes lending frameworks. Banner photo, a calm lake at dawn. Location, Columbus, Ohio. Status, open to selective consulting partnerships. Profile banner alone was enough to trigger mild heart attacks across half the executive team. I'd updated it at 3 a.m. Tuesday morning. By noon, it had over 900 views, a few likes. A quiet message from a board member I used to trust. Virginia, can we talk off the record? I didn't reply. Back inside Redmont, the gears kept grinding without grease. Legal was called in. The general counsel flew back early from his vacation in Aspen. I heard through a friend that he walked straight into the boardroom without changing out of his travel hoodie. Within minutes, a flurry of internal messages were flagged urgent compliance hold. Vendor contracts started bouncing back with hold requests. Accounts payable went dark. Payroll timing got sensitive. When salaries are late by even a day, people panic. By Thursday, HR was fielding panicked inquiries from department heads. Engineering leads wanted to know why their tools weren't provisioning. The marketing team couldn't book contractors for an upcoming launch. Even the janitorial vendor flagged a pending termination notice if their invoice wasn't processed by Friday. Carter, he started unraveling. He called David at the bank 3 times on Wednesday, left messages, tried texting. No response. Then he tried me, email, cell, Slack, which I was no longer on, but nice try. Even had Darcy from Ops send me a friendly coffee invite on Calendly. I deleted it. Meanwhile, I was building something else. A consulting deck, not for Redmont, for Redmont's competitors. 3 had reached out after seeing my updated profile. 1 even offered to fly me out first class for a weekend retreat to discuss strategic compliance integrations. I wasn't committing to anything, not yet, but the timing was delicious. Carter still hadn't admitted to the board what really happened. He was hoping to fix it behind closed doors. Patch the hole before the water spilled out. But the board was asking questions now. Real ones. Who authorized the leadership restructure without clause review? Was legal consulted before the role dissolution? Where is the waiver for the covenant clause? And my personal favorite, if this requirement was so critical, why was she let go at all? They backed themselves into a corner and handed me the blueprint to the exit. All I had to do was wait. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of a company realizing it just fired the one person holding the dam together, and now the cracks were widening. The call came in at 6:47 p.m. on Friday, just as the sun dipped behind the Kroger parking lot outside my window, and the first ice cube in my bourbon had melted. Private number, I almost didn't answer. But something in my gut said this isn't Carter. I picked up, Virginia? The voice was low, careful. A man. I recognized it before he said the name. It's Ken. Ken Harrington, board director. One of the few Richard ever trusted enough to leave unsupervised near real decisions. Old school, suit and tie even on Zoom. Used to manage compliance risk for a regional bank before retiring into governance and bourbon tastings. I hope I'm not intruding, he said. I tried your email. I understand you've been taking time. I didn't confirm or deny, just waited. He cleared his throat. I'm calling unofficially. Not representing the board, not yet, but I need to understand what's going on with the loan hold. Ask your CEO, I said flatly. I've asked. What I got was a TD talk about agility and trust falls. That earned a smile from me. First one in days. He continued, look, Virginia, I've seen a lot of messes in my time, but I've never seen a bank freeze a $120 million facility without sending a warning letter. They're not mad. They're surgical. That kind of silence means one thing, they're protecting themselves, which means we screwed up. Still, I didn't answer. Then came the sentence that shifted the current. I know about the clause. 3 seconds passed. Clause 12C, Roman 2, Schedule B. I pulled the original documents. Richard insisted it be tied to you, didn't he? I exhaled through my nose. Calm. Cool, yes, I said finally. And the bank required it be embedded post-signature. It wasn't a courtesy, it was a compliance anchor. I figured, he said. So now the company's frozen, payroll's at risk, and nobody seems to know how to unstick the machinery except the woman we unceremoniously tossed with a box of office pens. I waited again. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. I want to fix this, Ken said, but I need you to help me understand what we're standing on. What exactly did Richard do before he left? I gave him my terms. I'll talk once, but only in front of legal, and only with the board chair present. Ken didn't argue, just nodded into the receiver like he expected it. I'll set it up. Monday morning. Virtual or in person? In person, I said, downtown. Legal counsel's office. I want everything time-stamped. Understood. I ended the call and pulled up my continuity packet. 23 files. Original signed loan agreement with Schedule B writer. Email thread from Richard. Add Virginia to the schedule. Non-negotiable. PDF of signature chain, showing Jan from State Mid's initials next to mine. Internal memo I wrote outlining the clause implications, dated and acknowledged by then Finance. A screenshot of my removal from Redmont Systems, with timestamp I packaged it. Password protected the folder. Then I drafted a simple, polite email to Ken Harrington subject, requested documentation compliance continuity Ken. As requested, attached is the documentation outlining the current enforcement posture of Clause 12C, Roman 2 under the Redmont State Mid facility. Please review in advance of Monday's meeting. Best. Virginia Holmes, independent compliance consultant. I clicked send. My phone vibrated 30 seconds later. New email from legal at Redmont. Subject line, urgent, meeting request compliance continuity discussion. I didn't open it. Instead, I sat back, sipped the last of the bourbon, and stared out the window as headlights blinked in and out of the grocery lot like dying stars. They wanted me back, but not as staff, not as legacy. This time, I was the storm they had to negotiate with, and I'd be bringing the weather forecast. The conference room smelled like old leather and nervous sweat. Glass walls, deep walnut table, a pitcher of water no one touched. Downtown, 9th floor, neutral territory, Harrington and Low LLP. They'd hosted messier meetings here, I'm sure, but this one had a quiet tension that didn't need raised voices to feel dangerous. I walked in alone. No entourage, no lawyer at my side, just a slim black folder under my arm and the unspoken weight of a company on pause. Across the table, Ken Harrington looking somber but focused. The board chair, Evelyn Park, immaculate in a gray blazer, lips pressed in a line like she was already regretting everything. Redmont's internal counsel sat 2 seats down, typing notes before anyone spoke. And at the far end, arms crossed and trying way too hard not to look rattled, Carter. He looked older than he had a week ago. Maybe it was the circles under his eyes or the way he avoided mine. Maybe someone had finally explained what a covenant default actually meant. No one offered a greeting. I sat, opened the folder, pulled out one sheet of paper. This, I said, sliding it forward, are my terms. No theatrics, no dramatic pauses. Just the same voice I used when telling procurement that no, it couldn't expense rooftop massages during budget freeze season. Evelyn picked up the page, read in silence. Her eyes didn't widen, her jaw didn't move. But the stillness in her shoulders told me everything I needed to know. She saw the trap, and she knew it was airtight. Ken leaned in to read over her shoulder. Even Carter sat up straighter, trying to catch a glimpse. Terms of reinstatement, Virginia M. Holmes reinstatement under title. Strategic Compliance Officer, reporting structure. Direct line to Board of Directors, exempt from CEO oversight or review, scope of authority. Full oversight of compliance infrastructure, lender correspondence, and internal policy certification. Term, guaranteed 36-month retainer. No termination without board majority and bank approval. Rate, To be disclosed separately, indexed annually per CPI. Public statement, Redmont to issue internal memo recognizing transition to strategic advisory structure. That last clause wasn't for vanity. It was for signal to the bank, to competitors, to the market. I wasn't coming back, I was elevating. Evelyn set the paper down, folded her hands, looked directly at Carter. Not a word, not a blink, just silence. Carter's lips parted like he wanted to object, but no sound came out. He looked toward legal, maybe hoping for backup, but they were too busy reviewing the packet I'd sent the night before. The one with the clause, the signature chain, the audit trail of his decision to terminate me without clause review, the one that could have ended up in court if I'd been a different kind of woman. He swallowed, looked back down. Ken finally spoke. Virginia, if we agree to these terms, how soon can we notify State Mid? I didn't blink. I already spoke to Jan. She's on standby. The moment I log in with official designation, the freeze lifts. Another beat. Evelyn tapped the page twice like a judge signaling verdict. Legal, the lawyer nodded slowly. Clause is valid. Her appointment was original to the agreement. Termination without successor sign-off was non-compliant. In other words, you broke the rules and hoped no one noticed. Evelyn didn't ask Carter for input. She didn't need to. She just turned to me. We'll accept the terms as written. We'll have board credentials restored within the hour. HR will draft the official agreement today. Then she added, not unkindly, anything else? I nodded once. One more thing, I want the record amended. My departure is to be logged as a transition to advisory, not a termination. The official file should reflect continuity, not disruption. Ken smiled faintly. Carter looked like he'd swallowed a thumbtack. Agreed, Evelyn said. I stood, collected my folder. No gloating. No smirk, no parting shot. Just quiet clarity. Because the win wasn't the return. The win was making sure they knew I never left unprepared. And now I wasn't a name on a door. I was the clause they would never overlook again. Monday, 9 a.m., same calendar slot. Same call title, Board Strategy Review Phase Roman II Reapproval. But this time, the energy was different. Tense, tightly coiled. Like the company had been holding its breath for 10 days and wasn't sure how to exhale without causing internal damage. Everyone was there. Evelyn, Ken, legal, the outside auditor, 3 fidgety board members, the new CTO who looked like he hadn't shaved since Wednesday, and Carter sitting dead center on screen but somehow miles away. Then there was me. Second tile from the top. Virginia M. Holmes, Strategic Compliance Officer, no fanfare. No intro music. Just a name, logged in, authorized, unmistakable. At 9:01 the Zoom chimed again. David Bernal, Senior VP, State Midbank has joined the meeting. The temperature in the virtual room dropped 10 degrees. David's camera clicked on. Same unbothered stare, navy tie, eyeglasses low on his nose. He scanned the participants silently for a few seconds, then leaned slightly forward, reading each name, and then he stopped. His eyes met mine through the screen. He nodded once. Excellent, he said. Now we can proceed. 5 words, and the whole damn board exhaled at once. Carter tried to keep his face neutral, but the twitch in his jaw gave him away. He opened his mouth, maybe to object, maybe to reclaim something, but Evelyn beat him to it. Virginia, she said smoothly, you've reviewed the compliance memo and the updated budget framework? Yes, I replied. Both align with covenant guidelines. Provided documentation is submitted post-vote, and all draw requests include lender notice at least 72 hours prior to execution. David chimed in, that works for us. Ken nodded, all in favor of reapproving Phase Roman II disbursement under revised compliance oversight? Hands went up. Digital checkmarks appeared, everyone voted, everyone except Carter. Evelyn didn't even ask. The motion passed. Legally, structurally, publicly. David gave a curt smile. We'll unlock the facility by COB today, assuming nothing changes. He didn't need to say what nothing changes meant. No more stunts, no more shortcuts, and definitely no more Carter swinging an axe he didn't know how to sharpen. When the call ended, Carter stayed on for an awkward half-second too long, staring into the camera like he'd just been cast in the wrong movie. Then his screen went dark. I remained, briefly, just long enough to see the ripple hit. The CTO leaned forward and started typing, probably unpausing 100 frozen tasks. Ken chuckled softly and said, glad to have you back, Virginia. Evelyn added, more than glad, necessary. I nodded once. Then clicked leave meeting. Back in my quiet apartment, I closed the laptop gently. The screen reflected the sunlight like a clean blade. I stood, poured myself a cup of black coffee, and let the silence return. This time, not as exile, but as authority. They thought I was paperwork, an appendix in the org chart, a legacy, but I was the condition they never read, the clause they didn't understand, the name they scrubbed too early. They told me to prove my value. I did. In red ink on a binding loan covenant they never bothered to read. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.